Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm joined by Kim B. Smith, founder of Kim B. Smith, Inc. Kim works closely with leaders and high-performing women professionals, particularly in healthcare and leadership environments, helping them strengthen their voice, communicate with clarity, and lead with confidence. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark, for having me here today.
Awesome. And Kim, I'm excited about this conversation because communication is one of those areas that impacts everything: leadership growth, trust, visibility, yet it's often underestimated. So let's start with your journey. You built a career around helping women leaders strengthen how they communicate and show up, especially in high-pressure environments. What originally drew you into the work of helping leaders find and strengthen their voice?
Well, I was one of those leaders, those female leaders, women leaders back in the day. So before I owned my business, I was in corporate. I worked, a couple organizations, and I was the one. This was so long. Harkin, we won't go all long because of age and stuff like that, which is no big deal. But this was a long time ago. I was the only woman in the room, and the other women that were outside of the room were vying to get into the room. And here I'm like working on getting them into the room. So the men were coming at me, the women outside the room were coming at me. And, and I was just stuck between a rock and a hard place back in the day, and very successful in my career, extremely successful. So I held back. Like, I didn't speak up for fear, and I had many fill in the blanks of what that was. I chose to do the societal shifting of what I thought society thought how I should be, for fear of looking incompetent or uneducated, or, all those things that we can go through. And, with all those blanks that we all each have personal things that we fill in. So that was my journey. But when I left corporate, that was not my first step, though, into where I am now today.
Okay. And Kim, was there a specific moment where you realized communication was just not a skill, but a leadership differentiator?
Communication is more. It is, first of all, it is a skill, and it's a unique selling proposition for each and every single one of us. You and I, Mark, we're young, we're babies, and we, mama, dada, and when we all develop our vocabularies, but to actually communicate effectively with an executive presence, we're not taught any of that. We're just not. So women founders and leaders that I work with they're struggling. They're very challenged. I mean, they're extremely successful, but they're now going into bigger rooms, and they're very challenged by how to show up, what to say next. So in that arena, in that space, what happens is the critical dialogue and the imposter identity can go bigger in those moments and hold us back. And, actually, I just finished up just this past week with 9 amazing leaders, virtual, communicate more effectively as leaders. I mean, all these people, from a CEO to head of HR to leading 65 people out on a floor. The thing is the clarity. We as human beings get going all up in here, and we don't have the actual clarity of how to get our words out so the other person can understand us, and then actually call the other person or our audience or our teams to take action.
Okay. And Kim, to follow on with that, a lot of people think communication as a soft skill, but from what you see, it has real business outcomes. How does communication actually impact growth inside an organization?
Oh my gosh. And that's a loaded question, Mark. And that is a very good question. Let me start here. Here's one of the things I say. All organizations can have the most tidiest, most beautiful, organized CRM system, operating system. A founder, a CEO of a business can have the best sales processes. We can all have all these processes and systems in place to support us as human beings. But if we don't know how to verbally execute it, it will cost us not just financially, mentally, emotionally, stress, the critical dialogue that we all have. And that's where that it's like the big, huge block of Swiss cheese with the holes. Well, the Swiss cheese is always going to have holes because it can't be a perfect block of cheese. Life. That's where I see some of the big holes with the communication. We're not executing our communication properly. And it takes practice. It takes practice. So it costs an organization a lot. When you have a team, when people are holding back on their ideas, when they've been hired to come to the table and you're part of the team, lean in. But when people do not know for whatever that reason is, they will hold back. They will go small. They will look like they are not confident. When quite in fact, all my clients are very confident. It's just going to that next level and it's tripping them up.
Okay. Have you seen situations where improving communication directly improved trust, performance, or results?
All the time. I just had this virtual class that I was just sharing with you, Mark. I got to witness within those 5 weeks the shift of these leaders were making with their communication. And each week we came to the class and would reflect or regroup or recap from the week before, them sharing what they were doing. Like I went into one of my weekly meetings of my 65 employees, and I'll tell you what, my employees were engaging. And it's like, well, why do you think that is? It's because of the shift in how they were communicating. So I see it all the time. As long as people like I've got these 2 sleeves, I've got so many, tools up my sleeves. As long as you're implementing the tools.
Okay. It sounds like communication is just not about speaking. It's about alignment and clarity across teams. And one thing you mentioned during our earlier conversation was how much you enjoyed talking about how businesses generate leads. This is something every leader wrestles with. From your perspective, how does leadership visibility connect to lead generation and business growth?
Well, we all have to do that, or else we become the best kept hidden secret, especially if we're the ones, driving the bus of, doesn't matter what size the organization is. But I'm a big relationship builder, and that's what life is all about, is we need to build the relationships and find some commonalities, whether it's personal and or professional, or whether it's professional and or personal. And the lead generation, and that's some of the languaging I used to dialogue about. I try to stay away from getting really clear where your ideal client and target audience is, and making sure you're in there, being visible, building the relationships, how you are serving the room, and how the room in return is going to be serving you. Because we have to have a return on our investment, or we're going to be empty-handed all the time. So visibility for me is that's a lot of the work that I do with my clients, is learning how to be more visible, especially if you're going into a next level of leadership, or whatever the case may be, getting better with sales, presentation, more engaging meetings, all of that. A keynote. Organizations hired you to come in and do a keynote. We have to, at networking, so many people get real caught up in their heads before they go in a network, and I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to say.
What mistakes do you commonly see leaders make when they're trying to build authority or attract new opportunities?
It all goes back to how a leader is executing the communication, what they're feeling about themselves, how they're showing up. We have such non-authentic leadership, and we have very authentic leadership. And an authentic leader will say, I don't have all the answers, and that's why we have a team here. So let's push our sleeves up and let's all support one another, come back and come together. However, you and I live in a country, a society where a lot of decisions are based upon fear of not making numbers, fear of not making dollars, fear of losing our jobs, fear and the stress and the pressures and the fear and the stress and the pressures. So we're we're coming from that standpoint when I'm getting a little Brene Brown-ish, and she's got a book, Dare to Lead, and I believe everybody needs to read that book. It's a fantastic book. I read it a couple of years ago. Is being able to dare as a leader and say, hey, Mark, yes, we're in the middle of this project and I don't have all the answers. I'm unclear of what next steps. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? That is true, authentic type leadership. It doesn't say I'm weak as a leader. I'm unprepared as a leader. My dog ate my homework as a leader. It's being able to express that I'm a leader. I'm not perfect and I don't have it all together. And then, the other side of that is you said authoritative. And then what was the other part? Refresh my memory, please.
Authority or attract new opportunities.
Authority or attract new opportunities. Well, you got to be visible to be out there, to be attracting new opportunities and be clear of what those, the old analogy is be careful what you ask for. Well, I say get real crystal clear of what you're asking for, because be careful, because what you ask for is going to show up, and to be open to things of what is showing up and to be able to discern. So we need to be out there and very clear. I had a previous client, I was asking her, I said, this organization that you are in, is this the end all? Is this the end? She said, no, there's other opportunities outside of this organization. And I'm like, and there's a ton of opportunities for you inside the organization, but go to your direct report, who she has a very wonderful relationship with this woman, but you have to be clear of what you want next. So her direct report can keep her ears and eyes open of what's coming down the funnel and be able to present it to her. It may not be everything from A to Z, soup to nuts that we were thinking of, but being open and being clear for those opportunities.
Okay. So, Kim, you mentioned that you're currently going through a brand refresh, and that is something many leaders eventually face as their business evolves. What prompted the decision to refresh your brand at this stage?
Well, I think we all as business owners need to do minimal tweaking here and there. And, especially if we're going to be for 2026, expanding down to this or whatever that is and what that ever looks like. But my brand refresh is coming more from an internal thing. I started attracting a different level and a different clientele the last year and a half to 2 years. Well, let's round it 2 years. Myself I felt like by the end of last year, I have not caught up with that clientele. So it's just refreshing what the LinkedIn profile looks like, talking to that specific clientele. And it's also getting me to really become more discerned of where I am showing up and how I'm presenting myself. So it was a confidence thing. I just wanted to take my confidence up to the next level and to be able to keep up with the clients that were coming through my doors and why they were coming through my doors. What have I done differently that maybe I did not see?
Okay. And Kim, leaders listen to this podcast. How do they know it's time to rethink their brand presence?
Oh my gosh, there's so many indicators around this. So let me talk from the founder, the business owner, the actual founder, small to medium sized business. And they're very successful, 6, 7, 8 figures. They've built businesses. They're very successful. And I'm going to talk like the icing of the cake. Maybe it's time to update the logo to reflect because you moved into this new building. Or maybe it's time to update the logo because you've been traveling down this road over here, but now you've decided to take a right and go more into an expansion of here. An example, Mark, for the last 10 years, you have been the Microsoft I'm making this up, the Microsoft Outlook guru, but now you've had some taste of AI outside of Microsoft, if that's possible at all. But like I said, I'm making this up. And you enjoy in that arena and you enjoy those people that you are attracting. then it's possibly time to make a shift. Not let go of being the Microsoft guru that you are and have been, but expanding and looking at more of that AI stuff. And what was it that you really enjoyed working with those clients? Where are they hanging out? And what do you need to do as a brand shift? And how are you showing up to attract more of that if you really liked that, and the team really enjoyed working over here? It's being open for that growth and those changes. And, I'm not a brand professional, but being open for those brand refreshes.
Okay. It sounds like branding's just not design, it's clarity around who you serve and how you communicate your value. And let's talk directly about the theme of this podcast. A lot of times firms grow through the reputation and relationships, which works early on. But at some point, relying only on referrals creates unpredictability. From what you see in your work, where do referrals still play a role? And where do leaders need more intentional growth strategies?
Well, my experience, I was one of those business owners a few years ago sitting here looking at my screen. Where are the referrals? Come on. We want a couple this week. Felt like I was behind the 8 ball playing pool. Whereas I like to be more strategy and proactive of doing, reach outs. I mean, that's what LinkedIn, by the way, is a business platform. That's what LinkedIn is all about. Asking, a lot of people are afraid to ask, ASK. They're afraid to ask, building those relationships, showing up. And I'll focus just right now on LinkedIn or let's say you belong to a chamber in your backyard here, wherever you live, is you have to be visible. You have to be consistent, and we need to, as business owners, be proactive. I'm going to use 2 marketing words, and I'm not a marketing professional: inbound and outbound. Get clear on what that inbound marketing is. What is inbound marketing? Well, it could be word of mouth referrals, your newsletter, the newsletter that you do on LinkedIn, and just get darn consistent with this stuff. We're on 1 month and then we're off for 2, and people have no idea, are we coming or are we going? And then the outbound marketing is the marketing that we are doing. We're out networking, meeting people, building relationships, asking. I make sure that my calendar is, besides coaching with clients and getting out and speaking and presenting and networking, calls. And I make sure my calls are 30 minutes. And I preface those calls, what we are going to be talking about. How can we support one another? Strategic partnerships, ecosystems. Is this an ideal client of mine? How is business going for them? What do they see in that block of Swiss cheese? What holes are there that they're having a hard time filling? So we need to be proactive as well. It's as far as reach outs. It's as opposed to waiting. I love those word of mouth, those referrals, but we are now in a day and age we can't rely and depend upon that.
Okay. Thank you. And Kim, what habits or systems separate leaders who grow consistently from those who just plateau?
I think there's a lot on leaders that just plateau or grow consistently. I think the leaders that plateau possibly are navigating through burnout, maybe not leading their teams properly and correctly, ineffective communication, ineffective, standards and expectations. I think a lot of leaders, if they do reach a plateau, maybe it's time to step back and ask, have you outgrown this whole situation? And where do you need to go next? Doesn't necessarily mean a refresh on the CV and leaving your jobs. I think there's a lot of high demand with a lot of these leaders right now, and burnout, functional burnout. People can be in burnout and not know they're in burnout, so they're functioning in burnout. And those are some differentiators of a leader that has been plateaued to a leader that is really excelling. I think a good leader looks at their team and sees strengths. And also I don't like using this word, but weaknesses. I think a good leader helps excel the strengths of the team. It's almost like playing, and I don't even know how to play chess, but it's like playing a chess game. You're moving your, people around, it's Mark, if you are excelling at customer relations and I've got you over in data entry, Well, I'm not using you properly and correctly as part of my team partner. I'm going to move you into the customer relations and I'm going to eventually make you the head of customer relations. I think that's where leaders excel.
Okay, what a great example, too. Thank you for that analogy.
Mhm.
And Kim, you work with leaders across different environments. That gives you a unique vantage point. What are some of the most common communication challenges leaders face today?
All right, now I'm going to pick on my gender. It's women. And trust me, men have this, but it shows up differently. Here's the biggest things that women do when they are in new leadership. Male dominant rooms. Let's just state that a lot of rooms are male dominant. I don't care what industry we're in, financial, healthcare, manufacturing. It just is. So what I see women do are one, women are trying to mimic how men lead.
Hmm.
And it doesn't work for women, and it's not working for a lot of men either of how they are leading. It's it's like we cut our head off and our head is over here and our body's over here and we're completely detached
Hmm.
trying to lead. One, two. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what level these women are in their leaderships. I mean, I work with senior VPs, C-suites that come through my business. And as they step in and the rooms get bigger, they have a tendency to hold back and play small. Even though they have this phenomenal career, they're going into a different arena. So they have a tendency to hold back and play small. So
Okay.
that imposter suit will slip on. Their critical dialogue will take them over. And then they miss opportunities. That's where they are in rooms and they are not seeing as the leaders as they're stepping into bigger responsibilities. So they hold back. A lot of women will hold back and a lot of women will play small or they will show up faking it until they make it. And I'm not quite sure what that make it is. And if anyone ever discovers that, I would love for someone to reach out and let me know what that is. And by the way, back in my corporate career, that's what I was doing. Still don't know what that make it is, but that's what I see a lot of leaders doing and very successful leaders.
It's a great nugget. Thank you. And looking ahead over the next few years, leadership communication is likely to become even more important. What changes do you see coming in how leaders communicate and build trust?
Well, first of all, leaders need to be learning how to effectively communicate. Mark, I hear everything all over the board. I mean, and I do I do have male clients that come through my practice. I market to women, but I have male clients that come through. And, like I have men that are so concerned, and I love this. They don't want to just give their seat, quote unquote, at the table. They want to be an ally for women coming up and they want to pull women into leadership positions.
Mhm.
But their problem is they don't know how to show up and they don't know how to effectively communicate that. And they're concerned
Mm.
that they're talking to the guys over here this way and they're talking to the women over here this way. And that's not what leadership is. It's like we're sawing you down the middle and that's not how this goes. I'm seeing a lot of these men shifting. I'm seeing a lot of women want to shift as well to be more effective communicators, which is that's where opportunities open up. That's where bigger opportunities open up. We all need to be stronger in impromptu conversations when we're in professional settings, as opposed to going, I don't know the answer to that and I haven't had 5 hours to prepare for that. Well, life is not all about preparations, nor are all conversations. So I see a lot of this shifting going on in the future, in the very immediate future, with leaders wanting to communicate more effectively and also be able to turn to their teams and support them that way as well.
Okay. How should leaders prepare for a future where communication is more public and more visible? It's also about communication when it becomes more public and more visible. So maybe they're communicating out to their stakeholders, their shareholders, their customers, their
Well, what I do with a lot of my clients that are going, like you said, in front of the board members or shareholders or, major decision makers is we do a lot of role playing before they go into real life time. So we're practicing We're practicing dialogues, made up scenarios. Some of my scenarios are a little bit on the sillier side. And then we get into the real lifetime serious conversations. So we're practicing teaching my clients how to ground, because a lot of times when we stay in our heads, so it's vocalized speaking, our brains are way out there, our mouths are back here, and there's this gap, and we fill it with filler words. Critical dialogue gets louder, and then it starts shifting our whole body language and presentation of what it is that we really want to say. And then the room can dominate us as opposed to us leading the conversation. So role play is one of my favorites, and it's very effective.
Yes, excellent. Kim, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your perspective. For listeners who want to learn more about your work or connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
They can find me out there on LinkedIn under Kim Boudreau Smith, or they can go over to my website at kimbsmith.com. Either way, I'll get the message and swing back around.
Excellent. And for our listeners, I have posted Kim's contact information in the comments, so you can reach out to her. Kim, thank you again for joining us today. This has been a strong discussion, and I appreciate your time and insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark.